Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese. I'm joined today by Duck and Stuckey. It's time for some serious patriotism because now we tackle the American Conference, a conference that spans our great nation from the banks of the Hudson River to the white sand beaches off of FAU's campus to the Riverwalk in San Antonio. This league, just like last year, has potential to send a team to the 12-team college football playoff. So let's get into the teams. In terms of balance, we don't need to discuss necessarily the top dogs just at the top and then wait for the bottom to get into the dregs. In a weird way, if we go alphabetically, we're going to zigzag between really good teams and teams that are rebuilding. So let's just start, with the letter A with Army, 12-2 last year. They go undefeated in their maiden voyage there in the AAC, an Independence Bowl win over La Tech. Their odds to repeat as conference champions 10-1. Their win total sitting at 7.5. Nine starters returning, four on offense, five on defense, 86th overall in returning production. Now, Duck, I'm going to have you kind of get into the nitty gritty of this team, but let me set the table a bit here. No more Captain America on offense. Bryson Daly, and everything he did offensively for them. He ran it an impossible 319 times last year, broke 48 tackles, and somehow only put six footballs on the carpet despite all of that usage, all of the pitching. They only lost five fumbles the entire season, which spoke to his trustworthiness. He's gone. So too are pieces from that Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, and Kanye Udo goes off to Arizona State, which is a huge loss in the portal. Defensively, they returned five starters, six of their top 10 tacklers, but Elo Mudozi is off to Georgia. So another potential star that they're going to have to deal without this fall. Duck, do we think they can reload, or do you think this is a massive step back for the cadets up at West Point?
I think to expect a reload and a repeat performance of last season would be unfair. There were just too many stars that had to align last season for Army to go on a magical run. They had an electric playmaker at quarterback who fully understood the system and knew how to execute, make the right reads. Just very little mistakes by Bryson Daly at the quarterback position, and the execution was just superb. The A and B back play exceeded all expectations. You mentioned Kanye Udo, but the slot backs who were not explosive in 2023 had so much explosiveness last year in 2024 that they really needed. I mean, the offensive line connected and won the Joe Moore Award, and the schedule was really conducive to racking up the wins. We've got a few things this year that are going to be changing with that. So I think the book is still out yet on Dwayne Coleman. I think he's a little unproven. He might be a little stronger passer than Daly, but yet to see with really a great amount of workload if he's the guy that's going to be able to handle the load. Udo is just a massive loss at the B back. He just did so many things for that offense, or at least had the threat of doing those things. So be interesting to see how they replace that. I think it's going to be Jake Radina, who's going to come in and pick up the slack at the B back position, and then they're pretty short up with the slot backs. So probably okay in the running back room, I would think. The receiver and tight end room is fairly inexperienced, although that'll be mitigated just by the style of play. They don't throw it a ton, and they'll certainly find someone that can likely emerge and pick up some slack there. But the O line, you lose the left tackle, the right tackle, the left guard with no portal to pluck guys from. And you've also got the guy drawing it up, Matt Drinkall, who's no longer on staff. So I just think that you're due for a little bit of negative regression. I don't think it's a reload. I don't think it's a massive step back offensively. I just think it's kind of a little bit of attrition back to the norm of what the talent level would be here. Five starters return on defense. Six of the top 12 tacklers return. There are some holes. The front seven is undersized, as is always the case with a military academy. They usually rotate a ton of guys in, so they're going to need some young guys to step up, especially as we get into the crux of the season. You mentioned linebacker going to Georgia. That's a big loss. And again, there's no portal to really portal in and backfill that. So with Elo Mudozi going out, it's a loss in that linebacker room for sure. I think the secondary is okay. They've got five back that played meaningful snaps last season, but there are three contributors that were gone. So yeah, there's some holes that you're just going to have to try to limit the damage lost by graduating seniors and good producers. Now, the schedule, I think, is a little bit more difficult. You've got to go to Kansas State early in the season. You play North Texas, who I think is an emerging program that'll have a significantly better defense. We'll get to them later. At East Carolina and at UAB will just not be cakewalks for Army. And routinely, when they have to go to the South, they have been known in the past to throw up a stink or two. So I think that those travel spots could be tricky. At Tulane, at Air Force, and at UTSA. provide some tough road environments for Army. And then you've got the neutral game at the end of the season against Navy, which is always a really hard fought competitive battle. There's like 8 games on the schedule they could lose. And you have your leader that's lost. You have the guys that are the catalysts offensively that you could bank on 3rd and 2, 4th and 2. You absolutely knew exactly what you were going to get, and they executed at a high level. I just don't think we see a ton of that this year from Army, or at least not as highly efficient as what we saw in 2024. The schedule's a little bit more difficult. They've got more tricky road spots. I go under 7.5 here. I think this is still a good football team, but not nearly the team that we saw and the magical run that we had from Army last season. Stuck, what do you think?
Yeah, I went under here. It's one of my favorite win totals uh, in the American. The American, by the way, just to set the stage, very fascinating conference. I just spent the last 15 hours going through every single roster again and scheme changes but it's you have a bunch of options. Now you have 3 option teams. You have a bunch of air raid teams. Rice is moving to the option. Yeah, you have Tulsa's gone air raids. You have like 4-ish air raid teams, and then you have your handful of balanced want to run it. Your Tulane, Temple, Charlotte teams. I think that and then you have the teams last year. I like all the head coach hires in this conference. Like you have Rice, FAU, Charlotte, Temple, Tulsa. They were disasters last year with like lame duck coaches, a lot of quit. I like all the hires. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate into great seasons, but I think a lot of those teams are going to be more competitive. The effort is going to be there. And last year, if you look at Army, they had 10 regular season wins. Lehigh, Rice, they fired their coach. Temple, fired their coach. Tulsa, they quit, fired their coach. ECU, it was before they made a coaching change. They beat Air Force. It was its worst year in decades. UAB, we know, was horrible last year. And then their other wins were North Texas and UTSA. They could have lost either of those games easily. So everything broke right. Daly's gone being huge. The tackles, you have one with 3,000 snaps. The other one's on the Ravens roster now. Tackles are so important to an option offense. They call out everything on the defense for communication. And then their offensive line coach, as you mentioned, their tackles go from over 4,500 career snaps to less than 100. So that is a major question for me. And yeah, I think the schedule is going to end up being much tougher this year. So yeah, I went under. I project them at like 6.8. The way that I look at the American overall is you have, I would say, 5 teams at in the top tier that are pretty close, like Tulane, Memphis, UTSA, Navy, USF. And then I think there's a second tier. We'll see if any one of those teams can rise with like Army, North Texas, ECU. And then you have all the 6 kind of dregs with a lot of change. And most of them have new coaches, Rice, Charlotte, FAU, Temple, Tulsa, all brand new coaches. And then you have UAB, who I think is still down there as well. Could have a new coach by the end of the year. So those 6, so that's how I see it playing out. I think Army is in that second tier. Yeah, there's a lot of games that they could drop here. The loss of Daly's huge. The loss of the tackles is huge. Lost some other key guys. So I think there's value in the under. I went under 7.5.
We look now at Charlotte 5-7 last year overall, 4-4 in the American, 75, 100 to 1 to win the conference. Win total sitting at 3.5. 2 starters returning, 1 on each side of the ball, 131st in returning production. We keep getting energetic, quirky coaches, club lit, Biff, but it's not working in the Queen City. Now they snag an elite G5 coach from Ohio and Tim Albin. He won 30 games in his last 3 years in Athens. Long term, I love this hire. It's the best case scenario by a country mile for a program, in Charlotte to be able to get someone of this quality who's already established. They didn't have to go to the FCS ranks. They didn't have to take a hot coordinator. They took somebody who's already proven that they can win with realistic resources, even though Charlotte is kind of trending up in that regard. But are they going to have answers to some of the major questions, starting with the fact who's going to be their QB1? Is it Grayson Loftus from Duke, Connor Harrell from North Carolina? Will their recruiting wins in the wide receiver room pay dividends if that quarterback position isn't figured out quickly? And defensively, Albin had stoppers at Ohio that were nasty. That defense in general really carried them for much of the season. And now, essentially, with all these new parts, 10 new faces on this defense, at least compared to last year's starting defense, a lot of FCS, a lot of JUCO guys need to emerge. Can we trust Albin and his staff to get these key questions sorted out by, let's say, the end of September? I'll go to you first, Stuckey, on this one. What are your thoughts on the reload here at Charlotte?
Yeah, I like it. I like the Albin hire as well. I'm gonna miss Biff, but I'm not sure it's gonna pay dividends in year one. But their implied win total, you can find, is always shop around, especially for like futures. I think you can find like Charlotte is like 200 to 1 or like 75 to 1. If you, for some reason, want to bet Charlotte to win the league, why would you leave potential free money on the table? Just shop around for futures. You can see that across the board in the
Three
AAC.
times a better price.
Yeah, the differences between books. So just make sure you shop around as always. Um, I mean, Albin, look, his first year at Ohio, he had 3 wins, and then he won 10 plus 3 straight. So uh, maybe we see it in year 2, 3, 4. I don't really see it with this roster. They bring in a bunch of linebackers from Ohio. Maybe that's the strength, but their defensive line, they lose everybody, but they were bad last year. So I don't know how big of, I mean, Butler going to USF, maybe that's like the only meaningful loss, but he didn't play a ton of snaps. They have 0 career FBS starts on their defensive line. So we'll see how that comes together. In their defensive backfield, I, I like some of the additions they made, but again, unproven. They need their transfers to hit on defense. The offense, we'll see who ends up being the quarterback. Uh, Wide receiver, I mean, everything is unproven on this team. The offensive line in particular is where everything could go wrong for me. You lost your left guard to Cal, your right tackle to Pitt. You have your center King back, and then you just add some really lower level guys that you're going to need to hit. Not sure that they will. So the trenches on both sides of the ball are major questions for me. At least you do have some experience at quarterback. Like I said, we'll see who wins the job. But win total out there is either 2.5 heavily juiced to the over or 3.5 heavily juiced to the under. I project them at, let's see, I project them at like 3.2. So, I mean, I show a little bit of value on the over, not enough to get involved. The game that probably swings it, I mean, their schedule is brutal too. I mean, they're at Georgia, App State, and UNC in non-con. You assume they get a win over Monmouth is their other one. But like, I think the game that probably swings it, there's a lot of it's tough for these bottom 6 teams because which one of them, with all the new coaches, which one, like, there's probably gonna be 1 or 2 teams that are really, really bad in the American. Which are those two? That's going to determine a lot of other fallout in the conference as well. But the Charlotte's 2 games against Temple and Rice at home. So what do you think of Rice? What do you think of Temple? Those 2 new staffs, those 2 new teams. That's probably going to go a long way in determining their win total. I thought about over 2.5 earlier, but I couldn't quite get there. Too concerned about their play in the trenches on both sides. So it's a pass for me on Charlotte.
Duck, how are you seeing this, and how enthusiastic can you throw down a bet that gets tied up for 4 or 5 months when you don't even know the starting quarterback? And certainly with so many new faces on defense, you got to feel philosophically for what he wants to do, having watched a lot of Ohio football in recent years. But you can't have a lot of confidence that it's all going to work right away. And, Stuckey just mentioning the non-con, it'd be great to get a win over App State. Maybe at the end of the year, if they were playing them and they had more continuity and more experience and had time to gel, but having to play them in that opening month, even a down App State team, it's going to take a yeoman's effort to get an upset like that.
Yeah, overall, I think the hire too is a really fantastic hire. And if we see patience from the administration, I definitely think it'll work. But it's a full program rebuild. I think he'll make good on it. But offensive line looks to be in better shape than what they were when Biff left. And they're going to have to be because they couldn't run the ball with very much effectiveness. They gave up way too much havoc, 34 sacks, 78 tackles for loss. They tried to portal in as best they could with some of the limited pieces that they had. So they tried to piecemeal a roster together. EJ Mason and Tyre Brooks come in from the portal at the FCS level at receiver. That should be okay. They've got a young pass receiving tight end, Jake Young, who could be kind of the key that unlocks the doors for the passing offense. The reports that I read show that the QB battle is actually three ways, but Tim Albin just doesn't speak about it to anybody. So he just will not really tip his hand as to who's going to start. So I would guess it would be Loftus, but I mean, there's no way to know what he's thinking in the quarterback room. So really hard to say. I think the defense, they'll play physical defense. They'll play that sort of Ohio style defense if they have the bodies. They clearly do have the bodies in the linebacker room based on what you said with all the Ohio linebackers coming over. I think the secondary, the two deep grades out pretty well, but they just haven't played together. So we have no idea on the cohesiveness. We don't have any idea what they're going to do. Once they get into live game situations and have to face some of those attacks. Special teams is a complete mess, so I'm sure that'll be shored up in time with Tim Albin, but just right now it's just not overly great. The non-conference is tough. Look at how they end. I mean, North Texas, ECU, UTSA, Georgia, Tulane, they're not winning any of those. It's barely likely that, probably not winning the first two. I don't know if they have FCS Monmouth baked in there, but Monmouth will show up and be ready to go there. So if they're not up for that after being up for App State and being up for hosting Power 4 North Carolina, they could get caught with their pants down against Monmouth. So this is definitely a rebuilding season. I think the higher long-term will work, but I just don't have a tremendous amount to get excited about here with Charlotte, and there's too much unknown for me to want to make a play either way.
Warning to anyone with a weak heart, it's time to preview East Carolina. The Pirates went 8-5 last season, 5-3 in conference play. They win the Military Bowl over NC State 26-21, 16-1 to win the American Conference this year. The win total sitting at 6.5. 6 starters returning 4 on offense, 2 on defense, 107th overall, though, in returning production. Mike Houston got axed after a 3-4 start last season, and that part made sense. He was in a 5-14 nosedive across multiple seasons. What didn't make sense is what happened next. Blake Harrell took over with 0 head coaching experience, and they won 5 of 6. As I mentioned, they beat NC State in that bowl game, and I can't overstate what that meant to the fan base to stick it to an in-state school like NC State and have that opportunity. And now they turn around and they're going to play them again this year in the opener. John David Baker stays at OC. Harrell hired Josh Aldridge from Auburn to handle the defense. With the emergence of Caden Hauser, who, by the way, is healthy after sitting out the spring, a talented receiving core with experience around him, how high do you think this team can fly? Will they be flying the Jolly Roger for most of the games this season and get back into that 8 or 9 win window, in your opinion, Duck?
Well, you're right about one thing. That bowl win was huge. Those two fan bases, it's a regional rivalry. They don't play often and they do not like each other. So that was massive for ECU. And a unique caveat, they play each other in week 1. So very interesting game here in North Carolina. I really wanted to love this ECU team. Like I really, really wanted to buy into what they were doing here. But then I kind of started diving in and I'm thinking, did this team turn the corner after Blake Harrell took over? Or was it just that they played Temple, FAU, Tulsa, and North Texas? I'm just not sold that it was a true watershed moment with the program. And I think they just played some crappy teams that they ended up capitalizing on to start to build a little momentum to make a bowl. There are so many question marks this season. I think there's some upside, but there's just a lot of question marks. The defense was so porous last year at times. 311 yards on the ground surrendered against Charlotte, 440 yards allowed in league play, 5.5 yards per carry the last 3 weeks of the season. Offensive turnovers definitely compounded the issues, but twice last year they blew 16-0 leads and ended up losing to App State and Liberty. Liberty game was played after a lightning delay in the middle of the night, but they still had 2-score leads and blew those games. Last year, they had big physical secondary players that really stuck their nose in there to stop the run, and they were really good in pass coverage early in the season. That entire platoon in the secondary is gone. So it really could just take some time for this defense, in my opinion, to amount to much of anything. Offensively, I like Caden Hauser's back. I like actually what he did last season as long as he can cut down the turnovers. He's going to have to take a step as a passer in his maturation. They do lose some key receivers. They lose Najee Harris, their running back, who was a major player last year for them. They do have a couple running backs back, and Parker Jenkins comes in. So I think that they'll be okay in the running back room, but they want to throw the ball. They want to go lightning fast, air raid tempo. They need to shore up a couple of the receiver positions just so they can have some guys. Now, they did get some P4 talent infused from Oklahoma, South Carolina, Penn State. But some of those receivers are unproven and don't have a lot of snaps under their belts. So the book is not out yet on that receiving core, but they were highly rated in high school. The offensive line just needs a little work. I'm really concerned that the interior of the O line is going to take some time because they bring in some transfers from the portal who haven't played in this system. And last year, the execution was just poor. They were bad on third down. They were bad in the red zone. They far too often had empty red zone possessions or settled for red zone field goals. So there's just some things that they need to really clean up in order to, I think, take that next step as a program. I was initially thinking like this could be a conference long shot at 22-1 or whatever that opened up at earlier in the summer. I really wanted to go over the win total at 6.5. But then when I'm looking at the schedule, they got to go to NC State. BYU comes into town. They go to Coastal. And I just mentioned that because last year with those regional games against App State and Liberty, they just didn't go very well. They've got Army, Tulane, Memphis, and UTSA in the conference slate. Army's on short rest. I mean, this bunch could emerge and it could be a really feisty unit this year for ECU. I think that they'll play pretty scrappy football like we've kind of come to know and love with them. But I just think that it's just such an uptick in the opponents that they're facing. I think to really have a chance, you're going to have to defeat Army. You're going to have to defeat Tulane on the road. You're going to have to win some road games against some of these upper echelon teams. Last year, they had opportunities and they didn't capitalize on them where they blew them. So I just need another year for me to really take a firm positive position on ECU.
Do you agree, Stuck, that it's a mirage what happened the second half of last year because of the schedule and with this step up in competition, non-con, and who they're facing in the American that they're going to get exposed?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I took from it. A lot of it was who they played. I mean, they beat Temple, FAU, Tulsa, North Texas. Remember, they got blown out by Navy, and that was Woodson starting in that game at quarterback for Navy. The secondary is going to be way down. I mean, way down. You lost Revel was hurt last year. He went to the Cowboys, but Rogers was really good at safety. And you lost a bunch of others, and I don't think that they. I mean, you're relying on like Wilk coming back and playing safety again, a kid who was here a couple of years ago. I don't really like their room at all. Linebackers, super inexperienced. The defensive line, they lost some guys up front. They do have a ton of size. I mean, everyone they added is like 300, 315, 320, 325. So they have a ton of size and bodies in the defensive line. I think they'll be okay there. But the back seven, I think, is going to take a major step back. Offensively, I like their wide receiver room. I mean, I know they lost Sewell to Iowa State and Wright, who's now on the Browns. But both of the Smiths are good. Petaway can replace Wright in the slot. Johnson and Mangrum, I think, have potential too. So I like their wide receiver room. Running back, they'll miss Harris, but they still have some guys there. There are some things that did materially change. Like you went from Garcia, who was a turnover machine, like 7.5% turnover worthy play rate, to Hauser, who was much better. I mean, Hauser was what 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Garcia was eight touchdowns, 12 interceptions. But Hauser's still way too high. I mean, he had one of the 20 highest turnover worthy play rates in the country. Still way too high in that department. He was top 20 in ADOT too. And then he actually had the lowest time to throw. They get rid of the ball quick. This is air raid. This is Bryles Kiffin type offense, wide splits, you name it. Baker also came down from the booth to the sideline. I think that had a positive impact as well. But I think mostly it was the schedule. Duck mentioned the offensive line. I'm really worried about the offensive line. That's what could. Otherwise, I think this offense would be really good if the offensive line comes together. They lost their three best. They lost 7,000 snaps with their center, their right guard, and their left tackle. And I'm not sure. I mean, they need like a Newberry transfer to hit at tackle. Long from Maryland's probably going to start at guard. Their center, the projected center, Jones, got hurt in the spring. He's out for the year. That was another loss. So they were expecting him to start. So the offensive line does concern me. I lean under here, show a little bit of value. They do play all of the new coach teams in the second half of the year. Tulsa, Temple, Charlotte, FAU. That could be good or bad, right? Like it's going to take those teams time to, gel and figure things out. But depth is questionable on all those teams. They also could, just be decimated. They could be checked out. Who knows? So that could go one way or the other. It just introduces some variance. But their schedule definitely gets tougher. They play seven bowl teams from last year. Last year they only played five. They basically swapped out Liberty and App State for NC State and BYU this year. So you go from two Group of Five to two Power Five and non-con. And then instead of Navy and North Texas, you play Memphis and Tulane. So it got a little bit harder there. So I would lean under. I also think that this is we'll see where the market is. Obviously, it always depends on price. This will be a great over team at certain times this year. They want to go really fast. I think their defense is going to be really bad. As long as their offensive line is semi-functional, they're going to be a great over team. I was sad I mean, everyone's going so quick in the market in the summer. Someone already hit the East Carolina NC State. I hate high total overs early in the year on week one, but that's one I had circled. It did already get hit. I still might jump in, but that profiles NC State's defense should take a big step back as well. But East Carolina's going to go really fast. I like their weapons, and their defense, I think, is going to get torched, especially against Power Five competition. So that could be a sneaky over in week one. But it's either under or nothing for me with ECU. I project them. You can still find 22-1 out there, Caesars, to win the conference. I have no interest. I personally project them at 5.8. Their implied win total is 6.25, so a little bit of value in the under.
Football season is here, folks, and we've got some huge improvements and updates coming to the award-winning Action Network app. We're very excited to discuss those in the weeks ahead. But to get the most out of the app, you still need to be an Action Pro subscriber. It's only with Action Pro you get real-time pick alerts from me, Duck, Stuckey, and Colin, and the entire Action Network team of experts. Plus, you can access pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team, plus a million other benefits. And right now, just for BBOC listeners, you can save $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use code BBOC20. That's actionnetwork.com/pro and use code BBOC20 for $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. We just mentioned teams that could potentially be a good over bet on a weekly basis. Let's talk about the FAU Owls, 3-9 last season, 1-7 in conference play, 75-1 to win the American. Their win total is set at 4.5. Only one starter returns, and that's on offense. 112th in returning production overall, 120th specifically on defense. We've seen this movie before. You take an FCS coach, you take, a quarterback, you put it together. It's not the exact same situation, but we got some of the same characters. Kitley and Zappi and a host of receivers led by Jarrett Stearns came to Western Kentucky from Houston Baptist, and they took the world by storm. Zappi set the FBS passing record for yards and touchdowns in the season. The Hilltoppers went 10-4 against the spread that year, and also 10 of their 14 games cashed the over. Now, Kitley reunites with a quarterback he recruited in Caden Veldkamp, brings his favorite target with him in Easton Messer. The buzz out of spring was that they could not be stopped offensively. Veldkamp in particular looks sharp as hell. I think if this offensive line holds up, they're going to pop across the board because of that quarterback, play caller, number one target continuity. As I mentioned, though, only one returning starter. So how long does it take for everybody to work in concert together? Defensively, 0 returning starters. Brett Dewhurst is in his mid-30s, never called plays before at the college level. And he's, as I mentioned, super green unit, 120th in returning production with 0 full-time starters there. They have some potential starters from Big Ten schools like Minnesota and Rutgers. They have an edge rusher that I talked about in an earlier episode, in Eric Brantley Jr., who could maybe vie for double-digit tackles for loss. But I think it's going to be shootout city across the board for this offense. How do we play these guys week to week? I think that's where more of the value is, because I do think there's some significant variance in the fact that they could score 38, 45 points and lose an AAC game. So it makes it difficult for me to get in on the win total. I'll go to you, Duck, in terms of anything else you're seeing under the hood in this first year with Kitley at the helm.
Well, they could score 38 or 45 points and lose by 2 touchdowns. That's how bad this defense could potentially be. I actually went under on the win total 4.5. I bet it earlier in the summer. There's a lot of variance here. We'll talk through it here. This is the only time that we go under on this program all year. Week to week, we got to go over because the offense is going to absolutely be electric this season. We're going to see fireworks week to week. They're going to go blazing fast. They're going to go pass happy. We've seen this regimen work out before with Kitley when he brings in his guy who brings in his receiver Dilfer, who runs their system. And now Kitley gets to kind of have the shackles taken off of his wrists. He doesn't have to answer to anybody. He has complete and full control over this offense as the head coach. Video game numbers expected here. I expect tremendously high scoring games. The offense with Veldkamp is, I mean, he's in full control of the system. He's familiar with it. I think he's going to just hit on all cylinders on day one. And they have a capable backup if something happens to him, and Zach Gibson, who comes in via the portal. The running back room is shored up, I think, with a couple guys that they've got in. Xavier Terrell comes in, and Jamari Sands will come in and split carries. So if they do sneak in the run game, they'll have some serviceable pop there in the running back room. 4 or 5 decent options in the receiver room. We mentioned Easton Mester, who comes in with Veldkamp, but Jabari Smith is fine. Quincy Brown will provide a good target. J.R. Wilson comes in from Virginia, so they definitely have some players in the receiver room that can make plays. There is a question on the offensive line. It was bad last season for FAU, and now they're kind of piecing together with JUCO and using the transfer portal at the P4 level to get some guys. But it's a different system. It's going to take some cohesiveness, and so they're going to kind of be learning on the fly based on how their schedule sets up. But if they can shore that up, watch out, because this offense is going to be good to go. Defensively, they bring some guys in from UTEP, Purdue, Kansas, Wake, Liberty, but they were all reserves. It's kind of a raw unit. And we really don't know everything that we're going to specifically see, especially from the secondary. The D-line was atrocious last season. 5.0 yards per carry surrendered on the ground, absolutely shredded by the upper teams in the American last season. They gave up 400 rushing yards twice in a game last year. It was just so stinking bad with the run defense, and it may not be a lot better. Last year, they ran at a relatively slow pace offensively, and they kind of had some games that were lower than normal possessions, let's say. Well, this year they're going to be blazing fast. I mean, you could see 16, 17 possessions in a game, and that defense is just going to be hung out to dry. I don't think the stop unit is going to be where they need to, and it's going to pay the price for the type of style of offense. So when I look at the schedule and when I look at everything that's laid out here, I see probably winnables, obviously, against Florida A&M and FIU, but you've got Memphis on the schedule, South Florida, Navy, Tulane, UConn, ECU. Those are going to be all tougher opponents than what I have pegged for Florida Atlantic. You got to go to Maryland to open the season. Could be an interesting spot against the number, but I'm not sure they win that. So then to go over, you're going to have to sweep with FIU, Rice, UAB, and Tulsa. I don't know. I don't know if they do that or not, just based on how the defense is set to perform. It's going to be a fun group to watch this year. I look forward to betting a ton of overs on their games this season. I think it starts right away until the market adjusts, but the defense really has me putting the brakes on them really leaping up in the standings, because this group could just be horrendous defensively.
Yeah, I mean, I project right around 4.5, so I don't see any value. But you guys need to pump the brakes on this offense being the greatest show on turf. I mean, how many times is Veldkamp going to throw it to Messer? I mean, what is he going to have? 280 catches?
I think he'll have 280 targets for sure. We'll see if he catches all of them. But yeah, I think he's going to spam them all the time.
Wilson could be okay, but I still have questions about the running back room, the wide receiver depth, the tight end room, the offensive line. Looks really scary to me. Their only guy back was really bad last year. He could move from right tackle to right guard. In a way, it's a good thing because you're learning a new scheme, but I don't like the personnel they have. I mean, they lost the center who's now on the Seahawks. The left guard is now in Louisville. They're going to need Richardson and Gene to step up. Ugh, I don't know about that. They have 18 career starts in the offensive line. That could be a disaster. So I'm not fully sold on this offense being lights out, especially right away. The defense, yeah, they lost everyone on the defensive line. Who cares? They were awful, except for Davis, their defensive tackle. He was good. I think he's with the Colts now. But I don't really like the guys that they brought in on the defensive line. They lost all of their linebackers. Super inexperienced there. And they had some talent in the back seven last year. I mean, their cornerback Brown is now with the Packers. They lost a safety to Vandy, a safety to UCF. And who are they bringing in? I mean, you're going to need Rogers from Purdue to hit at corner. You need power four castoffs to hit. I'm not sure I see it. So, yeah, they're double-digit dogs in 4 games. They got a tough road slate. Basically, Duck painted the picture how they get over. Can they get one of at FIU or at Rice? I project them like under a field goal dog in both. Like they're close to coin flips. Can they get one of those? If they do, then they got to go 3-2 at home. Florida A&M, UAB, Tulsa, they'll be favored. UConn, ECU under a touchdown dog. So I, I'm right on market here. Nothing for me, but more questions than answers for sure. Get
Memphis
Messer if
Tigers.
you're a fantasy player. And Kitley is now the youngest and tallest head coach in FBS.
Hopefully the height will tie in with them going over on those totals. Like I said, it's a team I'm going to be interested in playing kind of flatly until the market catches up to it, just over, over, over. Even in week one against Maryland, I think the Terps are probably going to play two quarterbacks in that game. It's not going to really matter who they play, and they're going to try to get that freshman some experience and some confidence. So I could see a lot of actual play calling in the second half of that game, even if they're running away with it. All right, on to the Memphis Tigers, 11-2 overall last year, 6-2 in the American Frisco Bowl shootout win over West Virginia. 11-2 to win the American this year, 8.5 as their win total. Only three starters back though, two on offense, one on defense, 119th in returning production. I guess $250 million doesn't get you much in this economy because Memphis dangled that number out to the Big 12 and they got laughed out of the room. So for now, it's the American as their home. And the question I have for you, Stuck, is did Memphis miss their window? Let me just like paint this real quick. They won 11 games last year, but they got to replace nearly everyone, including Seth Hennigan, who started a million games for them. Mario Anderson was a touchdown machine. There's got to be some drop off with Brandon Lewis, in your opinion, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the offense is going to look significantly different. I mean, Hennigan's a 4-year starter. I expect Memphis to be a little more run heavy. Uh, they lost their top two backs, but you're going to have Lewis who can run the ball. They get Smith back from injury at running back. Rosier's back. So I think they still have a good backfield. And when you include Lewis in that, they can run the ball. The question is the offensive line going to enable them to do that? And that's one of the biggest questions I have on this team because you lost Holler at center, who's really good. You lost your left guard Hill in the spring to Colorado. That was a huge loss. You basically lost everyone except your left tackle Adams and Breland, who not sure he's up to par. Like you're going to need a Harvard, UConn transfers to really come in and hit outside of. I mean, the offensive line has a ton of questions. Wide receiver, you lose your top three too. You're going to need some transfers to hit there. So wide receiver is a question for me as well. Like who's the number one? They had a ton of injuries in the spring, so like there was, what's this depth chart going to look like? It was hard to get any intel on what they look like in the spring, but I imagine they're going to look a lot different on offense. Try to go run heavy. The bottom could fall off out of this team. Like there's just a ton of variance but they're recruiting well. They brought in a good portal class. They have money. I don't think that their shot at the playoff is shot because they have money from FedEx and they're still recruiting well. I think they'll eventually get there one season. I don't think it's this year, just with how much turnover they had. And then, I mean, their offense loses a quarterback to the NFL, your top two backs, your top three receivers, two to the NFL, a tight end to the NFL, and four key offensive linemen, one to the NFL. So that's major. And then on defense, you could start 10 transfers. They might start 10 transfers on D, on 9 on offense. That's what this team is this year. This is just your transfer heavy team. Could it be a Florida State? They could. Could it go really well and they could win the league? Yeah. And they go to the playoff. There's a ton of variance. I don't see them being a playoff team. But I mean, I think they're in that top mix. They're with like Tulane, UTSA, Navy, South Florida, and there's like almost nothing separating those teams. But I think Memphis has more variance, and I think a little more downside than some of those teams. I mean, even in the defensive backfield, you lost both your corners to the NFL. So, and this defensive scheme needs good linebackers. Well, you lost a linebacker to the NFL, another to Florida State. I'm not sure that they have them here, like Brumfeld, Rosell, like Watts, like these guys. They don't really move the needle for me. So I think their linebacker play, their cornerback play could take a big step back unless a guy like Cooper from Florida State really hits at corner. A lot of questions. Worried about their special teams too. So last year they had 15 players on defense with 150 plus snaps. 14 are gone. Now, this is a brand new team. I don't think that they're markedly better, or I'd say I don't think they're better at any position group on paper than last year going into this year. So I mean, they could end up being better. Like I said, there's a ton of variance, but I don't personally see it. Having said that, like what's their win total is sitting at what 8.5. You can find over 8.5
Eight and a
plus
half.
115 is the best price out there. Um, I project them that's implied like 8.2 ish, 8.15, depending on what price you get. I mean, I project them at around 8.5, so I actually show a little bit of value in the over. Like I have them favored in 11. Do I have them favored in 11 games? Probably.
Yeah, that's where I want to hop in, Stuck, just real quick. Because what's interesting, I'm nodding along with everything that you're saying in terms of not only the production, but the stars that they lost. But unlike a lot of G5 schools that try to figure out what their ceiling is by challenging themselves in the non-con, that's simply just not the case with Memphis. Like they could be a diet version of the 2024 team, and we won't even really know if that's the case until late October because this schedule is just made to stack wins. An FCS opponent at Georgia State, at Troy, hosting Arkansas in an awful spot for the Hogs, stuck between Ole Miss and Notre Dame. Throw in FAU, Tulsa, and UAB. We're already at 6-1 or 7-0 without really knowing if they're like even 95% of what they were last year. So I think maybe just from a win total perspective, if you had to play it, you need to go over because of the schedule. But I want to like set an alarm for myself when they get out of that downy soft opening, those first 7 games, to then say, all right, if there's an overreaction by the market and some of these prices are off by 3, 4, 5 points, it's time to start fading Memphis late. And then also we get the benefit of watching all these new faces, seeing how Lewis looks at quarterback. What do you think, Duck, in terms of them being challenged at all, other than, like I said, Arkansas, obviously an SEC team, an SEC brand with those kind of athletes, but that's the exact moment that you want to host Arkansas because I think it's the perfect letdown look ahead spot.
Yeah, definitely a spot for Arkansas to exhale before they have to gear back up for Notre Dame. It's a spot I had circled in red ink in the summer, and I'm sure Memphis did as well. So they'll certainly be ready to go for that one. I'm certain of that. Be interesting to see what the line comes out at, but anything north of a touchdown, I think Memphis will definitely be worth a look. This is a high variance team. There's a lot of portal comings and goings. There's a lot of new faces here at all 3 levels of the defense. I think that they could be better than we might think just based on the fact that these are guys who have played snaps. They've got game experience. They contributed at their other stops. Now they're going to have to gel cohesively together, but I like the fact that we've got a group here that has actually played football before and in meaningful games. So it's not like they're completely green and don't know how to play at the FBS level. So I think that while high variance, they could be okay, and they're going to have some time to figure it out. I think when you look at the schedule with Chattanooga, Georgia State, and Troy, certainly games Memphis will be favored in and should win. So they'll have a little bit of time to kind of get things ready to go that first 3 weeks of the season. And then after Arkansas, you're going to get FAU, Tulsa, and UAB. So, I mean, the schedule is just so conducive here to a very, very strong start. Week to week, the sentiment may become too strong, and we might see some value fading them in situations like, I don't know, at Rice or Tulane and ECU. Maybe they do get Navy on revenge. Navy beat them last year, and I think that's one of those games that Memphis will be ready to go last week of the season. But I mean, it's probably a 9-win team this year and a team vying for a conference championship, I would guess. So I don't have a strong position either way, but I would truly, just based on the start and the way the schedule situationally sets up, I would lean over.
Yeah, they just won the schedule lottery. And then they're a high variance team, but like they're at the top of the odds to win it. So like that, I have no interest in them in backing them to win the league. I mean, their 3 toughest games are at home: Tulane, Navy, USF in conference, and then they get Arkansas at home. They've been pretty good at home over the years. They have 6 winnable road games. UAB, Rice, ECU, FAU, Troy, and Georgia State, which is why I have them favored in 11. And then they're a small dog at home against Arkansas in a really good spot. So, but maybe the regression monster hits them as well. They were plus 18 in turnovers last year, 5-1 in one possession games. Although it's a brand new team, what does that really mean? Yeah, I'm not going under just because of my projection in the schedule, but not a team I have interest in investing in this year.
Next up, Navy, 10-3 last season, 6-2 in conference play. They get the Armed Forces Bowl win over Oklahoma. Never fade a service academy in Armed Forces or Lockheed Martin Bowl. If there's any military connection, just go ahead and play them blindly. They're 5-1 to win the American this time around. Win total is all the way up to 8.5. 12 starters return, 8 on offense, 4 on defense, 34th in returning production, 12th offensively. Usually, we see a service academy have a magical year fueled by experience, continuity, turnover luck, a lot of close wins, and then we all brace for that fall from grace. In the past 50 years, when a service academy wins double-digit games, they fall by at least three in the win column the following season. But the question here for this group is, was Navy actually ahead of schedule last year? Because the offense cooked really bad run defenses thanks to Drew Cronick's millennial wing T. Blake Horvath making the right decision all the time. He actually got everything going in the passing game too. He threw for 13 passing touchdowns, the most by a Navy quarterback since Ricky Dobbs in 2010. He has all his weapons back in the backfield, most notably Eli Heidenreich, who pulls double duty, also being a key pass catcher in this offense. The offensive line needs to replace three new starters up front, but I think they're still going to be lethal against middling to bad run defenses, and there's more than a few on this schedule. But can they hold up late defensively? They play that FAU air raid. They get a roadie at North Texas, at Notre Dame, versus USF, and at Memphis, all before the Army-Navy game to end the season. That's a rough finish for a defense that could be worse, at least on paper, even with a steady hand with PJ Volker calling plays. I would need at least 9-1 to play them to win the conference because you could easily be 5-1, 6-0, feeling great both about their chances to win the American and go over their win total and still not get there because that's how treacherous the back half of their schedule is. Do you see it playing out that way, Stuck, where they stack wins early, they look like fire breathers, and then again for the second straight year, the wheels start to fall off in November?
Yeah, this is we call this the American preview. This is going to be the un-American preview for me. The unpatriotics. I'm going under on Army, and I'm going under on Navy. I mean, I project 8.15. Their win total is the best under you can find out there, under 8.5 plus 120. So it's implied depending on the price, 8.8, getting close to 9 is their implied win total. It's scary though because there's a really good chance they start 7-0. VMI, UAB at Tulsa, Rice, Air Force at Temple, FAU. And then the schedule gets much tougher. But you want to talk about a team that could potentially 180 from last year. I know Horvath is back. I know all their backs are back. They're speedy receivers. But I mentioned this with Army, the tackles. This team lost its entire three deep at tackle. Entire three deep. And tackles are so important to this offense. They caught everything. They control all the communication. Like I think the interior still could be good or decent with Purvis, Nichols, and then you got Smith back who had some time. We'll see. Nichols might be moving to center, so that's something to watch. But the tackles are a major, major question mark for me. The depth is especially shaky. But I mentioned a team that could do a 180. Why? Well, last year, this is the team number one in red zone. I mean, they were historically good in the red zone, historically good in turnovers. They got so many. The red zone defense was amazing. All the interceptions they got, and they stayed so healthy. I mean, the top 12 on their offense only missed 2 total starts. Their entire offensive line was healthy the whole year. If they have anyone get hurt on this offensive line, it could be trouble. Bad. I mean, it just could all fall apart. So I'm worried about the tackles on offense. And then on defense, I'm really worried about the back seven. The defensive line still should be good. I mean, Reed's gone, but they got everyone else back. And I mean, Robinson's a monster. And we'll see if someone can like emerge to get those pressures that Reed got. But they'll be okay on the defensive line. But linebacker, you lose Ramos, who's a monster, and Jacob, who's just so good against the run. Big drop now. You got your strikers back in Campbell and McShane. But the defensive backfield, this is one of the best pass defenses that Navy has had ever. And that's usually their weakness because they just don't get the players in the back end. Well, they had an all-conference corner who's gone. Their safety, Lane, got drafted. He's gone. Their other safety, Williams, is gone. And I mean, those three are all multi-year starters, 6,000 snaps. Duhart is back at corner, but he's probably not even going to start. And he was not that great last year. They might rotate him back to safety. I like this kid Ross. And Onyehob was supposed to be a starter last year, and then got hurt. So maybe their corners can be okay, but there's still some questions there. But the safeties, tackles are so important on the Navy offense. The safeties on this Navy defense, they're going to stun a lot, play a lot of zone, try to confuse you. The safeties are the ones controlling everything. Major question for me. And then a team that wants to play field position, they lost their best punter in school history in Riley Reithman. Questions there. The rest of the special teams also have questions. So Yeah, I mean, last year they beat Bucknell, Temple. They caught Memphis off guard. And by the way, teams are going to now know what to expect from this Navy offense, this new chronic offense that was a modified wing T triple option, mesh. Now teams know they're going to be prepared. But they beat UAB, Air Force, Charlotte, USF, ECU, and Army. There were some quarterback injuries in there, teams that were just way down. Schedule's going to get tougher on the back end, but they could start 7-0 easily. I think they end up dropping one, and then it gets a little rough on the back end, especially if there's like injuries on the offensive line. So back seven on D, offensive tackles. I love Horvath, but I'm going under on Navy. I'll make them prove that they can win 9 games. Uh, Hopefully, I have Army and Navy under. Hopefully, they're both under by at least a half a game by the time they play at the end of the year. Otherwise, I'll just be watching that game knowing I'm going to get my money back on both totals if they're close. And hopefully, both of them aren't over. But yeah, I'm going under on both Army and Navy. I'm sorry, troops. I love you.
Yeah, anchors away. I'm going under on Navy this year as well. I think you're paying way too much of a tax for a name brand at quarterback, a Horvath. The book's out on him. The casuals know about him. His offense is fun. I still think Drew Cronick is going to have counters. Everything that was on film last year, he realizes that. Certainly at the back end of last year, defenses were more prepared, but then I think he has a whole offseason to get back in the lab. I trust
Yeah,
him.
they're going to throw more, is from what I'm hearing. Is they're going to try to
Yes.
throw a little bit more, but the tackles are bad.
Tackles are bad. And as you point out, Stuck, it's no guarantee when you have a crazy positive year in turnover margin that it's going to flip the next year. But even if it's just closer to 50-50 and an even split throughout the year, that was so instrumental. You saw it against Notre Dame. Once they had some bounces go against them, it snowballed. And with these offenses they're going to face in the last 5 weeks of the season, that's going to be paramount in terms of ball control. So I'm going to go under here. I think there's a chance that maybe they drop one or even two early in the season, just because by virtue of the offense they play, fewer possessions, those turnovers are magnified in terms of their value. Duck, do you agree with what we're laying down on this team? And do you think there's just a way outside of the win total to start to fade them in season later in the year, hoping that those empty calories and a 6 or 7 win start to the season, that the casuals see it and say, oh, they're ranked inside the AP top 25. This team is banging on the door again. Maybe they're going to get to a conference title game when in reality, they're probably not a top 3 team in the American this year.
Well, yeah, there's just too much attrition on defense. I mean, I won't rehash everything that was said because it almost mirrors my notes verbatim, but the offensive line pieces that are now missing, it's just so impossible to replicate the replacement of that until you get into game situations and kind of know what you have. So it's going to take some time. And I think it's critical not to understate that you get some film on this offense with the quirky nuances of the wing tee and the option hybrid and all the things that Chronic wants to do. And once you had some film on it, teams were able to adapt a lot easier. You saw less explosivity. You saw Navy really have to grind out possessions in this basically last third of the season. They had so much explosivity early in the season, and that kind of just went away. And so when you look at the back half of this season now in 2025, they're going to be playing some tougher defensive football teams, and they're going to be also playing some capable offenses. And so you're going to have to really stress matching these teams score for score and getting stops. And it's not the same platoon out there. So I think we will see tougher sledding. I don't have a real strong opinion on the win total either way. I'd lean under. I didn't play it, but I thought there's better options out there to play the win total. But yeah, I think a lot has to go right this year for Navy. They'll have to be very, very fortuitous to repeat the type of run that we saw out of the middies last year.
Now we're splitting this American preview into 2 parts, but before we get to the last team here in part one, Stuck, you have a little invitation for listeners who are going to be in the Chicagoland area for week 0.
Yeah, 23rd, week 0, Joe's, be there. You don't even RSVP anything, just show up. We'll be there all day from the start. I think 11:30 a.m. kick. Come hang out with us. We'll all be there. Colin, myself, Duck, Calabrese. So come hang out. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you again, meeting some of you for the first time, and would love to buy you guys some drinks and sweat some games to kick off the college football season. So make sure that you show up if you're in the area and are available. I promise it'll be a ton of fun.
All right, North Texas, 6-7 last year, 3-5 in the American, lost 30-28 to Texas State in the First Responders Bowl. Just about 20-1 to win the conference. Their win total sitting at 6.5. Six starters returning, three on each side of the ball, 79th in returning production, but 30th on defense. They were 5-1 last season for a start. They were absolutely cooking with Chandler Morris. Then they lose a shootout to Memphis 52-44. No shame in it. They went down swinging. They actually outgained them. They had 653 total yards in that game. But then the same result against Tulane, a 45-37 loss, outgained the Green Wave again. But the bigger loss in that one was that Chandler Morris's shoulder got banged up. They never listed him officially as somebody who was struggling with an injury, but it was clear to see for everybody. Not only was he gutting through it, but they had to change their play calling mix, their run pass mix, and the wheels just fell off because of it. For the rest of the season, they just didn't have that same bite offensively. So they start 5-1, they finish 6-7. And now we're going to have to assume that they're going to find an answer or replacement for Chandler Morris, who's going to be in Charlottesville playing for UVA, Reese Poffenbarger or Drew Mestamaker. I trust in this Eric Morris offense, just to be totally honest. Reese balled out at Albany. If you go back and watch his play for the Great Danes, he was somebody that was not just a threat through the air, but also he had a little bit of speed. He could scoot when he pulled the ball on some of the reads. Mestamaker as well is somebody who can use his legs. So I assume this offense is going to hum. The question is, can they get any stops? They snagged Skylar Cassidy from Sam Houston to fix this defense. What a hire to be able to go in state and grab somebody from an emerging power like Sam Houston, who's coming off a 10-win season. So much of that was laid at Cassidy's feet. Do you think he can get this defense fixed, Duck?
I'm still a little worried about the quarterback position, but I trust the offense. I trust Morris like you. I think there's North Texas in that second tier. There's a chance they can jump up to the first tier if Cassidy fixes the defense. So I think that I'm going to take a small shot on North Texas to win. You can find a 20-1 out there. I think they're worth just some couch change. The bet is you trust in the offense. I think his Mestmaker is going to win the job, but you also have quarterback depth if there's injuries. You lost a lot on offense, but I think they have the pieces there to be okay. The defense is just going to come down to Cassidy, the Sam Houston State transfer, some other transfers. They got to hit, and you got to be able to get stops. But the thing I like, and by the way, their offense last year was so hurt. It's so many injuries in the offensive line at running back. If Cassidy fixes their D, and they take a big schematic jump, they have the schedule. I mean, among the top 8 projected teams, they only face Army on the road, and I'm low on Army. They get Navy at home in a great spot. Navy could be 7-0. They have Notre Dame the next week. They're going down to Denton. That's a great spot. They avoid Memphis, Tulane. They host USF, Navy, and UTSA. They have 7 home games. They get Army early, which I think is good. And with all of the change that's happening at Army, UAB could be a lame duck at the end of the year. Rice could have no depth. And by the way, Rice is the third option team that they'll face late in the year on the road. They get Temple at the end of the year. They could be dead. This team could go on a run at the end of the year. So we'll see. I think Mestamaker. I think it's going to be Mestamaker, who, by the way, didn't even start in high school. He played. He was like a punter and a safety. He couldn't beat anyone, and then he walked on and he looked great in the bowl. But I think it's worth a flyer at 20-1 on North Texas with this schedule and the upside on the defense with Cassidy. I love the hire. So yeah, give me some mean green. They owe me for that Army game last year. A bet I will remember for the rest of my life. I don't know how many times Morris could throw an interception at the 2-yard line. And they got in that one time, I swear. And they didn't call it a touchdown. That game will haunt me forever. But North Texas long shot for me.
Yeah, I'm going North Texas as long shot too. A sprinkle. I agree with the assessment. If this defense ups their game, the schedule is there. I mean, as anyone who listens to the show knows that I'm susceptible to an FCS guy, whether it's a coach or a quarterback coming in. I watched a lot of Poffenbarger's, film. I think he's kind of the perfect fit for this offense. And like we said, I mean, you look at the bowl game, that was an incredible performance by Mestamaker. So either one, but I want Poffenbarger to be the guy. And if this defense, even cracks the top 75, top 80, we're not asking for him to pull any miracles here defensively, but just be a little bit more havoc-minded in the secondary, be a little bit better against the run, and all of a sudden this schedule, everything is in play to be able to win just about every American game on the schedule. Duck, Are we out in front of our skis here? Are we just a little too optimistic on this bunch, particularly because of the bottom falling out last year? Was that a systemic issue beyond just the play calling? Was that a bit of their depth? Like, where are you with UNT, and do you think they have the goods to kind of punch through to the top of the conference?
Well, it'll be stunning this year at the conclusion of the season to turn on the Sam Houston State film when we see their defense and what it will have become without their defensive coordinator. And if you look back at the prior years, it'll be just amazing to see what the job was that he did when he was at Sam Houston State. I think that he'll have an immediate impact on this defensive unit. I think that at times, they struggled with havoc. They struggled with explosive plays allowed. Their third down D, however, and their red zone defense were actually pretty good. So they already have a few things to build on. They allowed just 39% third down conversions. They allowed 56 trips into the red zone, but only 33 touchdowns and 16 red zone field goals. So they do have a few things that they can actually build upon, but schematically he'll draw it up. And I think with what they have for the talent infusion, you look at the defensive line, they have a decent bunch coming in, a couple guys from Sam Houston State, and then the backups are at least experienced. So if they're going to rotate some guys in, they actually have some intestinal fortitude on the defensive line that should be able to hold up during the entirety of the season. I think the linebacker room will really benefit from Trey Fields and Samaje Burrell coming in from Sam Houston. Those were two solid players for them last season that'll just kind of fit right in with what he's looking to do. Secondary should be shored up, and I think we'll see a little bit of that. It may not be an overnight turnaround, but they'll be a little better at limiting the explosiveness. Maybe they get a little more pressure, which we'll certainly see the secondary as the benefactor of that. So, yeah, I think defensively this group will be night and day better than what we have seen. And even some of the metrics, it's like they weren't complete garbage last year, even though they played in a high tempo system and they gave up plenty of yards and points. It wasn't all bad. So there's some things that they can kind of framework this defense around and probably shore it up. Okay. I like over the win total too. 6.5, I think is light. I think there's 9 games that they show up feeling really good that they have a chance to win, including all of the non-conference games. Lamar, Western Michigan, descending Wazoo, in my opinion, descending Wazoo team, descending South Alabama. I think those are all games that they have a complete shot, if not to be favored in, to win those non-conference games. They get Army early in the season, as Stuck had said, which I had in my notes. You host South Florida, UTSA, and Navy. I mean, really, to have a shot at the conference, you got to win maybe one of those, and you can have yourself at least in position to be in the conversation. They should breeze through 4 of the last 5. I think this schedule is very conducive to an improving defensive unit. The offense should be plug and play with Reese coming in from Albany, via Miami. And yeah, this is a team that I definitely think is ascending this season. I think they're going to surprise some people in the American. Absolutely 20-1 or greater. Take a quick flyer on them. There's absolutely no question. This is going to be an improved group.
Let's talk Rice. The Owls were 4-8 last year, 3-5 in conference play. They're now 80-1 to win the conference. Their win total under a new regime is sitting at 3.5. 6 starters returning 3 on each side of the ball, 118th in returning production. If you listen to our G5 primer episode, we went deep on Scott Abel and what he brings to this job. He's a perfect person to take over for a Rice school that has high academic standards. They don't have a lot of resources in terms of NIL money to go into the portal and to lure players in that way. And this essentially is what he's done his entire career. You go back to his high school days, he took over a team that was downtrodden, turned him into an absolute power in the state of Virginia. Then he goes to Washington and Lee's, an OC, then their head coach, takes them to new heights. And then at Davidson, what was really interesting is that it was a program at the FCS level that didn't have scholarships. He's still able to turn them into a rushing juggernaut. If you look at the last 15 years as a play caller, 10 times out of those 15 years, his offense led that level nationally in rushing. He does it because he was inspired by that Tom Osborne I-back option play. He started under center in the high school days and then over time slowly moved that back into the shotgun. And his gun option attack is something that coaches all around the country come in to Davidson to try to take little pieces to add wrinkles to what they're doing in their read game. It makes them so difficult to prepare for. And even in a conference where there's multiple triple option teams, what Rice is going to do is going to be specific to them and difficult to prepare for. Now, I'm going to kick it right to you, Duck, because this is a team that you've been focused in on, and a note that you shot me overnight. Man, Rice was close last year. I agree. Even though they, have to replace 8 starters on both sides of the ball, this is a team that's not starting from zero, but they have the right cook in the kitchen to be able to take these sparse ingredients and be able to whip up something interesting for the Owls. How are you playing them situationally, and are you interested in that win total sitting at 3.5?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dynamic offense that Scott Abel is going to bring in from Davidson. It's unique in that it's an inverted triple option out of the pistol and out of the gun. They run a lot of window dressing and some motion stuff to create opportunities for receivers to carry the ball, along with running backs and the quarterback themselves. So there's going to be plenty of options as long as they can get the offense to learn the system in fall camp and understand kind of the reads and the cues. That'll be really important because with the quarterbacks that they have coming back, it's unique to them. So there's going to have a little bit of time in the seat factor or lack thereof, where it's not necessarily going to be exceedingly crisp all at once, but it's going to be an offense that'll allow them to possess the ball, stay ahead of the chains, retain possession, and keep the defense off of the field, which I think will be critical. Yeah, I thought Rice last season was actually really close when you look at some of the games that they lost against some of the tougher opponents in the American last season. I mean, my goodness, they beat UTSA. They were right there with Tulane, beat Navy, beat South Florida. I mean, it was really an emerging team, and I think that there's good things in store for Rice as long as they can get it together. Now, the defense is thin, and there is a lack of depth, and so it's going to be interesting to see specifically in the secondary, which they could shore up okay. The front seven is of concern, and I think they'll be able to get run on just based on the personnel that they have coming in through the portal, and then the young guys from last year that are now being asked to step up. But I think Rice will be a great dog. I think as we progress through the season and we get into some games that'll be considered winnable, specifically Prairie View, Charlotte, and FAU in the middle of their schedule, we really could see this offense firing after some live game reps and some things that you can't simulate in practice. So yeah, I think 3.5 is really the only way I would play this would be over. I think there's probably 5 or 6 winnable games on the schedule. I think that they're going to have to feel good about their group in those situations. They might take some lumps against some of the stronger teams in American play, but I think they're going to be a great dog too. I think they could certainly be worth a look in week 1 at Louisiana as a team to try to maybe kind of catch the Cajuns off guard. There's not going to be a lot of FBS film. There won't be any on their offense that they're going to run. So that could be unique. Could be some spots later on in the schedule to catch them. UAB's got a real weak run defense, and so it could be a situation there. So yeah, I look for some spots situationally this season where I'm going to be backing Rice ATS.
Stuckey, before you get in here, I just want to kind of add one point in terms of roster building and overall recruiting. Because Rice targeted him early in terms of Abel, they got him in November. He was able to hit the ground running. They secured the 6th best recruiting class from a high school perspective in the American, the program's 2nd best class in the past 15 years. A small transfer class, but 2 quality starters coming on the defensive line. A potential addition at quarterback for a guy who may be in the mix here in Lucas Shearhorn. Between him and Drew DeVillier, Chase Jenkins, are you seeing anybody at quarterback that you feel even a little bit good about their chances to be pesky here in year 1? And if so, are you over the 3.5?
I would lean over. My fear is that their schedule's tough. They draw the top 5 in the AAC. They might wear down late. This team's going to be super small. Like I think Jenkins is going to win the job. He was a quarterback, converted to receiver, now he's converted back. He was QB1 in spring. He fits this system the best. I mean, Abel only averaged 15 passes per game, so they want to run the ball. It's more of a triple option. It's more like a gun option. It's not a pure triple option. Think like Chip Kelly offense. But they're small. I mean, like their running back might be 5'7", 160. Their wide receivers could be like 5'8", 160, 5'7". Like they're a small team. They could really wear down late in the year. And the offensive line could be a disaster. I mean, they lost their one tackle to Ohio State, another tackle to the Packers, another tackle to UNC, a guard to UNC. Tackles are a major, major question mark. Like their offensive line could be really bad this year. That scares me with this offense. So it might be a long year on South Main. You mentioned the portal class, like they're a bottom 5 portal class, like not a lot of talent brought in. I think they're trying to build the program with a unique scheme. I think that's what you want when you have the high academic standards at a place like Rice. And then the defense, I have a lot of concerns. Their defense was underrated last year, and they had a lot of guys who started for like 4 years that are now all gone, and I think they'll be okay at linebacker, but defensive line, I mean, you lost Piercy, 4-year starter. He's now on the Rams. Your defensive tackle, Floyd, 4-year starter. They were great at getting to the quarterback last year. Not sure they have the guys to replicate that production. I thought they had one of the most underrated secondaries at the group of five level. Well, you lost Taylor at safety, 4-year starter. Your cornerback Fresh, 4-year starter. Your safety Flowers, he went to Va Tech. You lost your other corner as well. Super inexperienced. That secondary might have went from a strength to a weakness. Um, like, yeah, I mean, you might be relying on like Porter and Crump from Houston Christian. You're going to need them to hit at cornerback. Um, so,
And you
yeah,
lose that DC that was drumming it all up.
yeah, I think that they will be an intriguing dog to back. My numbers say, I mean, I project them 3.9. So my numbers say slight over, but I'm worried about them wearing down. I'm worried about the offensive line and a lot of pieces on the defense. So I'll be looking to back them, but pass for me for season-long bets.
Next up, the South Florida Bulls, 7-6 last year overall, 4-4 in conference play. A Hawaii Bowl overtime thriller, a win over San Jose State. They are 5-1 to win the American win total at 6.5. 12 starters returning, 6 on each side of the ball, 14th in returning production overall. The headline here, let's just get it out of the way. Will Byron Brown stay healthy and be a star in the Veer and Shoot as he was in 2023? If he doesn't, well, shit, because Bryce Archie just chose the Cincinnati Reds and a bag of cash. So if this goes sideways with an injury as it did last year, the Bulls are going to have to work with freshman Lachlan Hewitt, who did ball out in the spring, but you got to, take your lumps with a freshman quarterback. So could that mean another lost season for them if it's all banking on Brown staying healthy? If he does stay healthy, though, let's talk about 2023 for a second. 4,100 total yards, 37 total touchdowns, killed Syracuse in the bowl game, ran for 92 yards against Alabama. With 5 other starters around him, a vastly improved offensive line potentially, and playmakers like Keyshawn Singleton, Chaz Nimrod, Cartavius Norton at running back. You got to have good injury luck, but the offense could be fierce. The defense ranked 109th in S&P Plus last year, projected to finish all the way up to 107th in S&P Plus defense this year. So let me start here, Stuck. Is putting any faith in a Todd Orlando defense just asking for it, or can the linebacking core and secondary really take a step forward?
Yeah, I mean, secondary, you got Rucker back, who's I think is really good. You do lose two solid ones in the secondary to Power Four teams in Austin and Bayard. The linebacker should be solid. Defensive line, they had three. Their defensive line was good last year. They could really get after the quarterback. You lost Doug Blue, Eli to Rutgers. You lost Gooden to LSU, and then Hawthorne's on the Rams. But I like who they brought in through the portal on the defensive line, so I think they'll still be pretty good there. Do I really trust Orlando? Not really, but I trust Golish. I mean, I think that this team, I mean, I project them at 6.8, so I show a little value in the over. The reason I'm not going over, and I'm going to win the conference. This is my horse. North Texas is my long shot. I think South Florida is right at the top with those top 5 teams. There's like not much separation. The reason I'm not going over the win total and I'd rather take a longer shot is will Brown stay healthy? Number one. I mean, he even missed the spring game with a hamstring injury. I was like, of course. They say he's fine now, but he's got to stay healthy. And the beginning of their schedule is brutal. Like, how beat up are they going to get? They start Boise at Florida at Miami. I'll be on them week 1, by the way, against Boise. Anything over a touchdown.
A potential money line, as Colin likes to say, in the dirty South. Do you like that?
Yeah, you got the humidity too, the humidity factor early on in the year. I am worried about running back. I mean, Wright, Joyner, and Keith were so good for them last year. Like they added Franklin in the spring, Norton. I don't know if they're going to be as good, and they had a ton of injuries in the offense last year for what it's worth. But their running backs were so good. There could be a big drop off there, and that kind of is the engine that makes this offense go and sets up the big plays. But if Brown stays healthy, I mean, look, this Golish year 3, he's been recruiting well. This team's top 20 in returning production. If Brown stays healthy, like you look at the top, Memphis has quarterback questions, Tulane has quarterback questions, UTSA we'll get to as defense questions, Navy and Army. We already detailed some of their issues. And by the way, something I didn't mention with both of those teams, if their offenses take a step back, like their offensive lines, Army with the quarterback, then their defenses get worse. Their defenses benefited from their offense being so good last year. So South Florida, I like a lot of the talent. They have a lot of young kids that they've been bringing in over the past couple of years that could really see an increased role. So there's a lot of upside with this team, especially if Brown stays healthy. So best number out there right now is 8-1. So I'm in there.
I'm going to pull this up in real time here and look at South Florida to make the college football playoff 30-1. Any interest in that, Duck?
Not really. I don't know if they're to a point yet where we're going to see them get Florida or Miami. There's a chance. I mean, they're going to give Boise State a very competitive game in week one. I already have +8.5 in pocket. I think South Florida is the play there in week one, but I don't know if they're going to get Florida or Miami. They'd have to get one of those in addition to Boise in order to really give themselves a chance because there's another conference loss somewhere down the way. So if you don't get either one of those, now you're talking 3 losses and just probably unlikely to make the college football playoff based on the current landscape and who else will be in contention. I think the defensive side of the ball is concerning, but like Stuck had said, I really like what they did in the portal. Dre Butler comes in from Charlotte, Merrifield on the defensive line from FAU, and added about 3 decent G5 linebackers too. So I mean, they're definitely trying to shore it up, and I think that they're going to make a few strides defensively. I mean, it's really about the health, though, Brown. Like the drop off at quarterback is just so massive if he goes down and could really handcuff and limit what this offense is attempting to do. You lose your 3 top running backs, you lose your 3 top receivers. There's just going to be a natural kind of working through that with the offense, despite the fact that they brought in some talented players through the portal. So, yeah, a little bit of transition here for South Florida. They've got a lot of tough conference road trips too. They got to go to North Texas, got to go to Memphis, got to go to Navy, and there is a chance that they start 0-3 straight up in the non-conference, which I think that's why the long shot future might be a little bit better play at 5.5-1 or 6-1 because they can go 0-3 and that doesn't affect anything in conference play. As long as they can stay healthy, they can kind of weather the storm there. So yeah, I mean, win total's low for a reason. I think the slate is tough. They've got those tough conference road trips, but could definitely see South Florida kind of being in the mix for the American at some point this season, as long as they can win some of those tough road games.
Yeah, and Brown stays healthy. 8-1 out there. I'm in for. By the way, 2 of the teams you mentioned they have to go to Navy. Well, Navy, for what it's worth, the week before is at Notre Dame. Pretty good spot.
And they had a hangover last season after Notre Dame. They had a massive hangover.
Could get beat up. It's going to be a physical game. And then they host UTSA, another team that's going to be in the run. USF has a bye before that week. UTSA plays Tulane the week before. So those are 2 pretty good spots against teams that are going to be in the mix for a conference championship with them or getting there at least. So yeah, I like USF plus 8-1.
How long has this preview been? We're already on our 3rd Owl team. The Temple Owls 3-9 last season, 2-6 in conference play, 100-1 to win the conference this fall. 3.5 is their win total. 7 starters return, 5 on offense, 87th in returning production overall. Casey Keeler, what a hire. Every time you think Temple is truly doomed, they go and pull a great coach out of nowhere. Bobby Wallace tried to, basically drive this team into the concrete AstroTurf at the Vet. Then they turn around and they get Al Golden. He turns them into winners. Steve Adazio, guys being dudes. He leaves for BC. They nail the Matt Rule hire. And now they're teetering on irrelevance after Rod Carey and Stan Drayton failed. And they land Casey Keeler. So great job for a program that, at least on paper, shouldn't be all that enticing when you look at the landscape, geographically of the American, to be able to recruit in a city like Philadelphia, to not have an on-campus stadium, all of these things that are usually counting against them, they're still able to get a great coach, and that can help them, kind of flip the tables here moving forward in the American. He's won 2 National Coach of the Year awards, a pair of FCS Division I AA national titles. He successfully transitioned Sam Houston up into a 10-win FBS program last year. Just a home run hire any way that you slice it. Will they overachieve and flirt with bowl eligibility this year? That could be a little bit much in terms of asking for a miracle in year 1. He does have 4 starters to work with on the offensive line. Tyler Walker comes in from Montana State as his play caller, and his offense last year with the Bobcats was electric, averaged over 40 points per game and close to 500 yards total offense. Evan Simon or Giovanni McCoy, I think they're going to go with McCoy to use him the way that Walker used Tommy Mellott last year. Mellott won the FCS Heisman, so I think it's going to be a better fit. I think there's a reason why they target him. Jay Ducker could also get 20-plus carries in this offense as they, try to shrink down the game and protect their defense. because the defense was bad last year, and I don't see the pass rushers materializing in year one. They really need Jalen Stewart to be a tackling machine for this to be anything other than a bottom 20 run defense. Maybe a team I can play, catching a lot of points, maybe cashing some overs. I got to see how fast they want to play. I got to see their run pass ratio because they could go in a couple different directions depending on quarterback play. It's a pass for me, but I'll kick it to you first, Duck, in terms of what you're seeing with the Owls.
The change in scheme offensively for Temple is going to be significant. We're going to see power spread. We're going to see Tyler Walker, who comes in from Montana State, 68% run last season. We're going to see a lot of 21 personnel, some 22 personnel. We're going to see some tight ends, some big bodies, just a different type of system than what they ran last year under Stan Drayton. Tyler Walker, when he was at Montana State last season, ran almost 37 seconds between plays. They were a very power run team, but they methodically moved the ball down the field and they took their time offensively. And I assume that Keeler will adopt that sort of strategy to try to protect that defense. So I think we'll see some unders early with Temple in their first couple games of the season. And they'll have to do that to protect the defense that was just so terrible last season, although there will be immediate improvement, if nothing more than just the culture, the attitude, the way they practice. A lot of that's going to come through. I mean, Casey Keeler just said at media days that he immediately instilled the Temple tough mentality, the culture, the attitude has improved significantly. And I think a lot of that is contagious in a football locker room. I think you get a group of guys believing that they're going to be better. And we could see it early in the schedule as they go to UMass and then host Howard. So, I mean, I think there are some opportunities for Temple to get wins. And I think as long as they can get the scheme offensively up and running with the offensive line, offensively, they could be okay based on what we want. We might not see a ton more scoring, but we'll see the run game hit. We'll see them extend the chains. We'll see them stay on the field. You know, Keeler said that his offensive line in the spring improved from practice 1 to practice 15 more than any offensive line he's ever coached. So some of that could be coach speak. Some of it could be real. He likes the group of guys he has along the offensive line, even though some of them don't grade out exceedingly well. I think that he's got a bunch there on the O-line that he believes in, and that's good enough for me, at least offensively. Defensively, I mean, they're going to rotate some guys in on defense on the D line. I'm not positive that there's any real resemblance of a pass rush. Last season, it was just so bad. The Havoc numbers, 14 sacks, 46 tackles for loss, not nearly enough pressure. They're going to have to get a little better there in order to just provide a little bit of relief to the back end because the secondary at times got torched. So Brian Smith comes in from Rice, and he was the defensive coordinator that really shored up the Rice pass defense over the last 5 seasons. If you go back and look at the Rice metrics, they improved incrementally year over year over year in the pass defense numbers. And so it may not be an overnight fix, but in due time, I think the Temple pass defensive numbers will improve. I think we've got a couple spots here with Temple. In week 3, if Georgia Tech were to somehow beat Clemson, I'm absolutely going to be on Temple at plus 28.5 or whatever the number is going down there to Georgia Tech. I think that could be a good spot situationally to back Temple. I think we could play them later on in the season when they face Charlotte, Tulsa. Could be a feisty group against ECU. So there are some spots situationally where Temple could be good as a large dog, especially with the style of ball control, slow pace that they're going to play. I think unders could be good with this team. Maybe not enough for me to go over the win total, but certainly a much improved group this year, I think.
Just simplifying this, Stuck, to get you in here. You get an offensive line that apparently the head coach already trusts. You have 2 really good play callers on both sides of the ball and a desire to shrink these games down. Does that automatically, if you throw out all the other variables, and there's a million variables for these G5 teams, does that make them an interesting team anytime they're catching points?
Yeah, that Georgia Tech spot call out is very, very sharp by Duck because that, especially, you know, if they beat Clemson, and I think they're going to have a good shot to do so. Our ACC preview coming up soon. That's a game, you know, I would love to get over 4 touchdowns. I think I projected, I don't know, just under. Those are 2 teams that want to shrink the game playing each other. So getting that big number would definitely be intriguing. My numbers say over by a little bit, not enough to get involved. Because the schedule is tough too. Because they didn't win the lottery. Outside of the game against Howard, all of their easy games are on the road. And then what do you think of UMass, Charlotte, and Tulsa, the new coach teams? Because those games are on the road. That's pretty much what their win total is going to come down to because their home slate is tough. You got Oklahoma, UTSA, Navy, ECU, and Tulane. They didn't get any of the. I mean, it's not like Temple has a great home field advantage, but you would rather have some of those games against the lower level teams in this conference. Playing them in Philly would be more preferable than playing some of the top teams. I think that McCoy's going to win the job as well. I'm not the biggest fan. They want to run the ball. I'm not sold on the offensive line. We'll see. Also, the receiver group, like who is going to step up? There was this receiver room. Oof. I mean, they lost Allen and Wright. Wright was such a stud. I mean, the receiver room looks really rough. The offensive line was so bad at run blocking, and that's like what they want to do. But yeah, I agree. They want to be a ball control offense. The defense, I mean, it's amazing how bad their D was last year, but their D was also bad because the offense was so bad. But they lost Thomas to NC State. They lost Black, their other defensive end, to the Ravens. And then the secondary, losing Johnson really hurt. He went to NC State, their cornerback. This cornerback room, who's playing corner for this team? Like D2 guys? So cornerback and wide receiver, oof, look really rough. That's my two biggest questions on this team. My projections, small, lean to the over. I'm passing, but I agree with Duck. There'll be some times we can back the Owls throughout the season. I don't hate like under week one against UMass either, because I think the biggest question on the team, the defensive line lost some guys, but they have some decent depth there. They also lost all their linebackers, but I trust their front seven a little more than the back. And it's not like UMass is going to light them up and take advantage of their corner group. So, uh, and I think that UMass can have a decent defensive line. Whatever, I'm getting ahead of myself. Don't mind those looks, but
No, it's good though because I have UMass Temple written up in the Action Network app, so I like that. I like UMass Temple under. I already wrote that up.
Nice.
All right, Green Wave time. Tulane 9-5 last season, 7-1 in the American. Lost to Army in the AAC title game. Got drilled by Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl. Plus 340 to win the conference this fall. Win total sitting at 8.5. 5 starters returning, 2 on offense, 3 on defense. 70th in returning production. So much big headline talent left. Darian Mensah gets his bag at Duke. Mekhi Hughes leaves for Oregon. 8 starters on defense gone, but they portal in 34 3-star recruits. They added Caden Samanza, who I like a lot more as a backup now that Jake Retzlaff is on his way to the Big Easy. Retzlaff had bright spots last season, but he needs to be more accurate, needs to cut down on those turnovers, and continue to threaten teams with his legs. All that being said, an upgrade that I think smooths out the loss of Mensa a little bit, to at least to a certain extent. All 4 co-coordinators are back, which is nice from a staff continuity perspective. I'm just not in love with the game-changing potential talent on the perimeter on either side of the ball. They want to run the ball, but they have to replace 3 starters from a really good run-blocking unit. Mo Westmoreland could be the savior on the edge defensively, but they're betting on a transfer to Pop and the D-line in general. I'm a bit worried at cornerback. They may need transfers from both Albany and Wofford to start for them, which, when you look at their overall talent in the last 3 years and all the success they've had, to be able to drop down the FCS level and really need this wouldn't be a nice to have. This is kind of a must have for them, is a bit concerning. Duke and Ole Miss, they catch early. They got, a stretch of passing teams to face in conference at UTSA, at Memphis, FAU in a 3-week stretch. This defense could get lit up in the back end. Given what they lost, I think they deserve to be able to say 8-4, 6 conference wins. Hey, successful season. Let's celebrate. But that would be under on the win total. The plus 340 to win the conference says like you need to be in it the whole way, if not getting there in terms of the expectation. So I just think that the bar has been raised so much in New Orleans that all of a sudden an 8-win campaign is kind of lackluster. I just think they have too many playmakers to, replace and address all at the same time. And I'll go to you first, Duck, in terms of Retzlaff. The news and the circumstances of him leaving Salt Lake City are kind of a circus on their own. But where are you on him as somebody who can be essentially a playmaker to raise the play of every single person around him and to be able to give them a little bit more to prepare for? Or do you think he's just more of like a turbo version of a game manager? I don't know exactly where I'm falling on him because he had his breakout moments last year. But BYU, I think in some spots won despite him. So talk me through what's happening, and do you even expect him to win the job coming in so late in the process?
Yeah, the staff made it very clear that he had to get in there and compete for the job, and it wasn't going to be handed to him. Well, let's put it this way: I bet Tulane under 8.5 early in the summer on the win total. Didn't change my opinion on the win total. I didn't buy out. I didn't cash out. I didn't do any of that stuff. I am firmly comfortable with the position. And let's see if he goes out there and wins the job. I think that the real book on Tulane is going to be they lost so much production in the defensive front seven, which really carried their team at times last season. And I'm not sure that they replaced it. I think when you look at guys that were lost, like Fobbs White and Aiden Huntington, Corey Platt, I mean, these are big time players. And then
Jenkins.
the offensive guys, Darian Mensah and Makai Hughes, are the headliners. But there was just so much lost production. Parker Peterson was a good player. Machado, the linebacker, was a decent player who went P4. I mean, there's just a lot of holes now defensively for Tulane that you really have to shore up. And these are veteran, experienced players that are now no longer there. So you're retooling a lot defensively, which was kind of the crux of your team. And when you were playing up in competition, it was that defense that you could rely on at times. Well, now you got three P4 teams on the schedule in the non-conference, and I'm not so sure that that's going to play out the same way that it has over the last two seasons. I've actually faded Tulane in week one. I have 7.5 with Northwestern in hand, and I feel really happy about that. And I feel like Northwestern can go down there to New Orleans and give them everything they can handle and win the game on the field. So, would not surprise me at all if Tulane starts 1-3 in the non-conference, and then hosting East Carolina and Army will just be no walk in the park. And certainly games they'll be favored in and should be expected to win, but I don't think those will be walks in the park. And then later on down the way, you've got to go to UTSA and you've got to go to Memphis back to back. And I think that'll be where the win total is lost. They'll drop one of those. We'll find maybe another one down the way, but I'm exactly where you think. I think this is an important hook. I think this is a team that can have a very successful season. I think they can be kind of in that top 3 or 4 in the American this year. Maybe they don't make the conference championship game, but they're still having a very good year. And I think it's 8-4. So I went under the win total. I don't really have a strong opinion on that they're going to win the league. I think there's better plays out there. And just a season where we see a drop down for Tulane. They've done a great job over the last 5 years elevating the stature of their program significantly. People forget the 20 years before that, but they've done a really good job elevating their program. This year, I think it just creeps back down slightly under the win total.
We say it a lot. There's teams that win the scheduling lottery. This is like the scheduling surprise tax bill because this is challenging across the board. Do you agree, Stuckey, that this could be a team that could play close to their level last year and still lose 4 or 5 games?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a tough non-conference. You got Memphis and UTSA on the road. You also have Temple and Charlotte at the end of your schedule. You assume that they're wins for Tulane, but maybe they're not. Maybe those teams start to figure it out. Those are brand new teams at the end of the year. FAU too. You have those brand new teams at the very end of the year. You were banking on them being wins if you're betting the over. I project 7.7, right around 7.74. So I like the under as well. I mean, you look at the offense. You lose Mensa. I'm not a buyer in Retzlaff that he really moves the needle. He kind of raises the floor because their quarterback situation was a disaster, but it doesn't really move the needle for me. Hughes has gone to Oregon. You lose 2 receivers to the NFL. Not in love with their room. You lose your tight end to Miami. Not in love with that room. Your offensive line, your left side will be okay, but you lost 3 really good ones. Your center, right guard, and right tackle over 7,500 career snaps. Your defensive line, you lost 2 guys to the NFL, another one to Baylor. Your linebacker, you lost Grubbs, Machado. Like, they'd still be okay at linebacker, I think. Defensive back's really what I'm worried about. You lost your cornerback Robinson to the Packers. Your strong safety, your safety slot do it all Ransall to the Jags. Your another cornerback Pleasant to Auburn. And I think they'll still be okay at safety, but cornerback, big question for me. You mentioned it. I think they're probably going to go with a Wofford and a Troy starter. Big downgrade at cornerback for me. That worries me. I mean, this is a team that lost 12 players to either Power Four or the NFL. They have 6 on NFL rosters right now. So I think wide receiver, quarterback, cornerback, all down. I think if you look at this and you compare this team to last year, every single position group, at least on paper going into the season, is worse off than it was last year. So I have a lot of respect for Summerall and this program, but yeah, they have a high floor because they play the bottom 4 and they're still a good team, but I'll make them prove they can get the 9 wins. I like the under.
It's Tulsa time. The Golden Hurricane 3-9 last year, 1-7 in the American 75-1. No thanks to win the conference this year. Win total at 3.5. Six starters returning, three on each side. 94th in returning production. I'm gonna stick my neck out here. There's a lot of new hires across the G5 that I can talk myself into. I'm out on Trey Lamb from day one. He's 35 years old. He went 27 and 25 in four full seasons at the FCS level, plus a couple during that weird COVID year. He did well at Gardner-Webb, but as we discussed in the G5 primer, the Big South before it merged with the OVC was a really lousy FCS conference. So to be 27 and 25 when you dig into it more, every single time that they played up and they played ranked teams to the FCS level, I think they were exposed a bit. And I just think he needed to go the coordinator route at the FBS level, build a little bit more experience, understanding of what it takes. Because, when you look at what they did, they just outscored people in his time at Gardner Webb. I don't see that from this offense, at least in year one, because we got Kirk Francis. His QBR was 27.7 last year, 125th in the country of qualified quarterbacks. I don't think they're cut out to be, having their offense bail them out in this year. And then their defense returns three starters from a unit that gave up just about 500 yards per game last season. That's 132nd. Abilene Christian is in the opener, but they're an FCS playoff team from last year. Then they traveled to New Mexico State, which is a winnable game, but you absolutely 1,000% need them to get those two if you're even thinking about going over on this number. I hope they win both. Then I'm just going to unload on them really for the next month until the market catches up on them because five of the six top finishers in the American last year await them on their conference slate, as well as a trip to Stillwater to play Oklahoma State, a home tilt with Oregon State. I see 2-10. I'm going under on this one. I know you have to pony up from a juice perspective. Last I saw it was minus 150 to go under the 3.5. I would bump it down to 3, have a push on 3 because I think 2-10 is where this is going to head. Duck, we've discussed this before in terms of Lamb and this fit and what they're trying to do offensively. I don't see it in year one. Has anything changed for you since we recorded about a month ago?
Not really. It was so disappointing to see this Tulsa team completely quit on the season after the ECU loss last year. The attitude, body language, the effort, it was like totally checked out, like did not give a shit. What was also really stunning was how bad the defense was. 5.8 yards per carry in league play. They allowed 66% completion percentage with 38 touchdown passes against last year. Only had 19 sacks registered. 7 times last year, Tulsa surrendered 45 points or more. It was just so bad. It was way down there with Utah State and New Mexico at the very bottom of the barrel in FBS. They did portal in some guys defensively at defensive lineman and linebacker, and those units could be a little bit stronger maybe than what we saw last season out of Tulsa. It's marginal improvement. Secondary is totally of concern for me and still bad. I don't like what they're going to roll out there for the starting platoon. I don't think it's going to be enough talent to really affect improved margin in the pass metrics or in the win-loss record. They're going to play fast offensively with this Trey Lamb system that they're going to roll out there. But instead of the consistent vertical shots that we saw from previous regimes, we're going to see some smash mouth ground game. They're going to use some heavier set formations. They'll still be in the gun and try to use some spread, but we'll see a tight end or two in some of the formations. They do have a couple backs. Jay Allen is a pretty decent back. Sevion Morrison comes in. Dom Richardson comes in from Baylor. So they do have some talent in the running back room, which could, if the offensive line gets shored up, maybe they stay on the field a little bit to protect that defense and kind of hang in there a little bit against lesser opponents. Jeremiah Ballard has a lot of pressure on him. He has got to step up in the receiver room like he did at UTEP because last year he completely disappeared. The O-line, who knows what they're going to be. It's kind of a hodgepodge here. Really, it would be stunning for this offensive line to get up to mediocre, which would be up from bad. So, I don't know. I think defensively, they're just way behind in third down execution, red zone performance, limiting explosive plays. It's just the defense is not there. The schedule is tough as well. I think right away you got 6 games that you're just not going to compete in. Army, Navy, Tulane, Memphis, you're not going to compete in. Oregon State and Oklahoma State, you're kind of behind the 8 ball. So you're really limited in your shots on goal for trying to accumulate wins. I think they get the first 2. I think they get Abilene Christian and New Mexico State. I hope they win those 2 games convincingly because in week 3, it's a major, major fade for me when they take on Navy. They actually catch Tulane in a bad spot for Tulane. So in that situation, if they're catching 25 or so at home, I could maybe sniff around and take a shot on Tulsa against the number there in week 5. But it's kind of fade city the rest of the way. ECU, I think, will be a fade. FAU game will be a major over for us. Oregon State will come in there and probably beat them up. So I think that this hire could work long term if given some patience and some tolerance to a couple of losing years. But this is a true year zero. It's a reset. They're trying to implement new schemes. I don't think they have exceedingly great personnel. Probably be pretty tough to accumulate 4 wins here for Tulsa.
Yeah, college Kirko Chains, he's immobile in the pocket. I think he's going to get benched. I think they're going to go with another option, and I think they're going to get their doors blown off. This is the one team in the American I am so far down on. Are you seeing any positivity right away in a year zero Stuck?
I am. I kind of disagree with you guys. I mean, look, I think their ceiling is like 5 wins, but 5 or 6. They're not. I don't think they're going to a bowl, but I could see them winning 4 or 5 games. I actually like Lamb. There's a ton of like energy and enthusiasm around him. I think Wilson was the worst coach in college football, so for anyone would have been an upgrade over him. But I think this is a big upgrade. Yeah, they're gonna go. It's air raid. This is Tenny light. Get the ball out quick. They don't need Francis to move. He's just gonna sit there and play point guard. Uh, I like some of their weapons too that they brought in. I know that they lost Benjamin and Williams, the wide receiver, but I like some of the guys they brought in: Booker, Tease, Miller. They got some guys back from last year. There's some talent here. Presley, who was converted from a running, he was at Oklahoma State running. He's a wide receiver. He's going to be playing running back, and they're going to use him all over the field. Keep an eye on that. Morrison and Allen too there. So I think they have some talent. The offensive line is the concern. Uh, could be really bad. They really need the 2 East Tennessee State who came with Lamb and their coordinators. They need the left tackle to hit. Adams, can he step up and be the left tackle? Obviously, a super important position. And then at linebacker, who was an absolute stud of East Tennessee State, Ray Coney. They're going to need him to step up at linebacker. The defensive line lost some players, but like I like that some of the transfers they brought in. They need Turner and Johnson. They came from Pitt and FSU. They need those two to hit. And then their defensive line could be improved. Yeah, their secondary loses everybody. Who cares? This is one of the worst, historically bad pass defenses. There's still questions there, but they can't be any worse than last year. They had some young guys who got playing time last year. There's a lot of injuries, and they brought in some transfer portal. Still major questions, but I don't think it could be a lot worse. So yeah, they do face 5 of the top 6 from last year in the AAC. But the questions for me is O-line, back 7 on the defense. But like I wouldn't be surprised if they picked off like Navy 25, Duck. You give me 25 there, I'm gonna take out a mortgage. And yeah, but I mean I'm not my numbers show a little bit of value to the over, not enough to get to the window. Just like again, this team, the depth is super shaky at certain positions. One of the wins like that you want them to get, like UAB at the end of the year. What's UAB's mindset going to be? But yeah, there's a brutal stretch in there. They could get beat up, but I like the hire. The D can't get much worse. I like some of the pieces they brought in. They'll be a lot more fun to watch. And they quit last year. Like the culture, the energy will be much better. So tiny lean to the over, but I'm not going to the window. So I'll root for you guys.
Well, 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 it's Trent Dilfer time. UAB, the Blazers went 3-9 last year, 2-6 in conference play. They cashed the under for the second straight year on their win total. They're 85-1 the American this fall. 4.5 for their win total. 3 starters returning, 2 on offense, 1 on defense, 120th in returning production. Before I get to Trent, let's start with Mark Ingram, the AD at UAB. I could go a lot of ways with this, but I think I'm going to keep it fresh. I'm going to borrow some lyrics from my number one hit from this summer, "Manchild" by Sabrina Carpenter. How could we sum up how Ingram has handled this coaching situation? Is he stupid? Or is it slow? Or maybe he's just useless? Because that is exactly how I would characterize someone who didn't fire Trent Dilfer. Trent Dilfer was ready to be fired. I think he like knocked on his door and he already had everything in a little brown, a packing box ready to go. They went 2-9 last year against FBS competition. They lose Amari Thomas to Houston. If you're going to keep anybody, if you're trying to spend any money, keep him. He's your best weapon. They lost two, if not three starters in the offensive line, depending on how you look at returning starters. This was all in addition to Dilfer's general attitude, which vacillated between angry, sarcastic, to preachy, to depressive. You can be a lot of things in the world of college football coaching. Yes, Trent, you can be a prick. There is a clown car of college football coaches who have been assholes, but you got to be successful to hang around if you want to act like this. And you can't act like you're above it all. On multiple occasions, he's looked down on this level of coaching football, and he's made gaffes that I think have hurt his locker room, certainly hurt the fan base, which then trickles down to hurting fundraising and NIL. He said he wasn't impressed being on field level and seeing Brock Bowers. It's like, okay, I guess you're just not impressed with anything at the college level. And then he like downplays the seriousness of what they're trying to do. He had that presser where he's like, it's not like we're frickin' Alabama. Read a room, you clown. There's nothing a G5 fan base wants less than being told, like, get patted on the head and say, all right, it's cute what you're trying to do, but you're not Alabama, you're not a blue blood. Like, he's created a toxic situation inside his locker room and in the community. And for that reason, I think we got white flags written all over this season. The only positive thing, he does bring in Steve Russ. He actually is a full-grown adult as his defensive coordinator for the first time at UAB. He was coordinating the Air Force defense for 6 years. Those defenses, I think they were protected by the brand of offense they played. They gave up a lot of points. They didn't necessarily give up a lot of yards because there were fewer plays. I think he's going to just do a better job shoring up some of the fundamentals. I don't think they're going to have quite as many blown coverages or communication issues. So it is an upgrade. But this UAB defense is almost totally brand new, 114th in returning production. So when people ask me on Twitter, are we fading Trent Dilfer? Hell yeah, brother. We are fading this guy again. They don't have the horses or a unique scheme. I think the defense will be upgraded a little bit. Maybe we're talking about like the 112th defense in the country. But this fade train steams on. We're not stopping for anything. Under 4.5. Let's make it 3 straight unders for Trent Dilfer. All right, Stuck, you just disagreed with me on Tulsa. I think that'll be a fun one to bring up throughout the season. Are we going to be sparring on UAB and Dilfer?
My numbers say small to the over. I mean, I project 4.3, so no, pass. But I'm not a kid in the guy. We'll see if he can take a jump. I mean, you got to remember, Francis Akitna, not that much experience for Tulsa and UAB. We'll see if they could take a leap. But Kidna had 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, but 14 big time throws, 22 turnover-worthy plays, 6% turnover-worthy play percentage. And they lose BB, their bell cow, back to Indiana. They lose 7 of their top 8 receivers. Their offensive line is a major question, especially at center after they lost Wilson to UVA. So I have questions about the offensive line. There's only 19 career FBS starts there. We'll see if the offense can come together. There are some intriguing weapons. I mean, Hooks, Milner, Brown from Iowa. McCray has looked good. There's a lot of injuries in spring. Hard to really see what was going to go on with the offense. But look, I don't have anything on the win total, but I want to talk about the defense. I actually like what they did on the defense. The defensive line worries me, but some of the guys they brought in the secondary, I mean, Crumpley from Pitt, Fisher from Maryland, Baca from Kent. He was their leading tackler. Royster from St. Francis, I think is a good player. Nickelback Cheeks for BC, he started for a while. They brought in all these former starters that they were able to get at UAB. So their secondary, which was pretty underrated last year, considering in UAB how bad they were standards. But I think they reloaded well. And then you mentioned the hire of Russ, and then they brought in a bunch of other assistants from the Commanders, from the NFL ranks. Why is that important? Well, if UAB is going to go over, or when I'm looking to bet them, but this is worth noting for the Army game. Another reason to go under on Army. UAB has a bye before Army, and they're catching them early in the year before the second half of the year. They have a bye before Army at home. It'll be the second option team that they face, and they'll be coming off of a bye. And by the way, they play Rice. They're one of 2 teams in the country that play 3 option teams. You bring in a coordinator from Air Force who spent 8 years coaching the defense at Air Force, and you're going to play 3 option teams. I think that's important. So they might be live in, and that might get them a win at Rice, say, late in the year. So I like some of the back end additions on the defense, and I like the hire of Russ, especially on a schedule where you're playing 3 option teams. They could end up getting that Army game after the bye week, second option team. You have Russ. That sneaky spot on the schedule, but pass for me on UAB.
Duck, what do you think here? I mean, I think that's a very sharp piece of commentary when it comes to defending triple option principles. And I think depending on where the narrative is around the team, maybe we get some extra value, actually hold our nose, have to take the points with Trent. But do you see them
Hard to see this team winning enough of the coin flip games in order to get to 6 wins, and a lot of those games are going to be on the road. So at UConn, at Rice, at Tulsa, at FAU. I mean, you'd have to go almost a
They're
four
not at
out
home
clean
for
sweep
any
on
of
the
the
road.
bottom 7 teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean it's just it's hard to believe in the rhetoric that's used by him. We saw him get up there during the media days for the American Conference, and what he had to say. It just seems uninspiring. He talks about himself a lot. He talks about how good he's done with his whatever, and it's just uninspiring to me to want to rally around this UAB program. I think they probably are going to be a year late in sending him off. I think that injecting some life into this once proud UAB football program would be something that this that UAB would really benefit from. And I think that there's just I don't have a real strong opinion. I think that there are some guys that are going to be okay. I think the running back they bring in from UTEP could be a bell cow. They could ride him a little bit, and he could be explosive and show a little wiggle. They've got 4 pass receivers that, yeah, they could shine or they could be turds. I really don't know exactly how that's going to shake out. O-line is, from all my accounts, a mess, and it's going to be really tough to see that group really come together early enough to where it's going to necessitate winning some games early. So I don't see a lot to believe in. I'm not getting to the window on over by any means. I certainly don't see a bowl game. I just think that there's just too much that this group has to overcome. Very, very sharp on the coordinator hire and the guy they brought in from Air Force to discuss triple option. That's a real interesting caveat. Um, I don't know if they beat those teams necessarily, but they could.
All right, let's finish up the American. Meet UTSA, the Roadrunners, 7-6 last year, 4-4 in conference play, plus 420 to win the conference this season. Win total sitting at 7.5. 11 returning starters, all of them on offense. 31st in returning production, 7th offensively. As I mentioned, the whole offense returns. We got an elite G5 quarterback in Owen McCown. UTSA was red hot to finish last season. They go 5-2 down the stretch. They nearly pull off an upset of Army, who won the conference. I really feel confident that this is going to be a top 3 offense in the American, and it'd be a nice added bonus if JT Clark finally bounces back from injury. Just from a feel-good story, if he could contribute at all, I think that would be an added bonus for the Roadrunners. But for all this offensive upside, the defense is in a complete refresh. Back-to-back years, they lose the American Defensive Player of the Year. But Jess Lepp is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. And yes, this is a huge job to complete, but you got Vic Shaw stepping into that pass rushing position that helped Trey Moore and Jamori Robinson explode statistically. I think to a certain degree, this LEP system just creates statistical monsters on the edge. They've rolled out, a front with that potentially could have 3 juniors and a senior on the defensive line to be able to gum up some of the works in terms of their run defense. I think they can be a unit that will still generate a lot of tackles for loss, but can they cap the explosives going against them? 39 plays of 30 yards or more allowed last year from scrimmage. That was 132nd nationally. So when they didn't get home, people were just killing them over the top. The secondary has to play better. They went out and get KK Meyer from Nevada, which shows they really did their homework, to be able to get younger players with upside. I think he should be a quality starter. Bottom line, I think this offense should be great by G5 standards. I trust Lep to coach him up on defense. And when you look at the schedule, yeah, they're going to lose to A&M, but then I think anything else is possible. They could be favored in 9 or 10 games outside of that. They get Tulane off of a bye. These guys are my pick to win the American at north of 4-1. I also took a flyer on them at 18-1 to get into the college football playoff. When it comes to quarterback play, I know that last year we saw the G5 representative just ride Ashton Jency, who that was the right choice, obviously, generational running back. But I think moving forward, you're going to have not just good, but probably great quarterback play to punch your ticket to the playoff. I think they have it. Stuck, I'll go to you first in terms of the Roadrunners. This is also a coach that I know the G5 show has made money on. BBOC in general has made a lot of money on Trailer over the years. Do you think it's time to get back and hitch our wagon to his trailer?
5-1 is the best price out there. for what it's worth. I'm not quite there, but I show value in the over. I might bet the over. I mean, I project them at 8.38. So best price on the win total over 7.5 minus 135 is out there. You said it. The offense returns everybody, and they even had injuries in the offensive line. They get a couple interior starters back, and once they got kind of a continuity on the offensive line late in the year, their offense really started to hum. This could be one of the best. I think this will be the best offense in the conference. By the way, JT Clark, he retired. He's coaching high school now. He's
So that's official. The last I heard was that they were going to give it like one more shot or something. Well, wish him the best of luck.
he's going to try to go to 2026 Pro Day apparently, but
Interesting. Yeah.
so he's too injured to play this year. But they have plenty of weapons, and their offense going to be good. The question's on the defense. Like you lost your top five guys on the defensive line. Brown was really good. Robinson went to West Virginia. Triplett went to Georgia Tech. Your linebackers, you lost 8,300 snaps, 6,000 with UTSA. You lost a 5-year starter. You lost one to Colorado, one to West Virginia. Then in the secondary, you lost a couple to the NFL, and you had to bring no returning starters back. So I have a lot of questions about the defense. One thing that was really evident last year, and this is all you'll hear Traylor talk about, is penalties. They were so undisciplined last year. It was very uncharacteristic for the team. That's all he's hampering on. I mean, he is just drilling that home. So I think you'll see them be much more focused and much more disciplined last year. Last year they had 113 penalties, second most in the country. 42 led to first downs. That's six more than anybody else. They were one of two teams with 1,000+ penalty yards. I think they'll be much more disciplined this year. That'll clean up some of the issues they had. This team kind of started to surge at the end of the year, but it's all about the defense. Will the defense be good enough to balance out the offense? They avoid Memphis, Tulsa, Navy, and UAB in schedule. Trailers 29-3 at home, 16-5 in November. They have an easy road schedule after Texas A&M. You got Tulane, USF, Army late in the year when Trailer really gets going. So yeah, this is set up for a big year. I am picking UTSA to make the conference title against USF.
All right, Duck, we're almost out of time, so hit us with your angle on how to play the Roadrunners.
Yeah, very solid offensive football team. They're really shored up at all position groups. They have a real luxury at the G5 level with a shored up offensive line with depth that very few teams have. So the other great thing that they have that nobody's talking about, their tight end room is incredible. They have 4 tight ends that are 6'5", 240 or heavier, and they're all pass receiving tight ends. So when I look at that group, they utilize their tight end group in the pass receiving department. Who's covering these matchup nightmares? Texas State, Temple, Rice, Tulane, Charlotte, ECU. Like, who's covering these guys? I just don't see a lot of favorable matchups for the defenses that are on this schedule. And so this offensive system is going to stress weaknesses in their opponent's defenses significantly. I think we'll see improved defensive play. I think the penalties, which I had in my notes, 113 penalties for 1,054 yards, the direct result was 2 or 3 losses on the field that they probably should have won. It directly cost them the game against Rice. It directly cost them the game against Tulsa. It was embarrassing how undisciplined and poorly or just the penalties were such a problem that compiled and so to compartmentalize that and isolate that in the offseason and really focus on discipline, I think we'll really see this team jump. I bet UTSA, bet it at a price that's no longer available, but I bet UTSA to win the conference. I think they have a fantastic chance of running up the wins in conference play and getting to that situation where they're in the game. So I think you figure out what you want to do when they get to the conference championship game, if you want to ride the ticket or hedge and take profit or whatever you want to do, but we're not there yet. But yeah, I think UTSA is a fantastic team in the American this season and a very competitive group up and down their schedule. I'd lean over the win total as well.
That'll do it for the American. That puts a cap on our two-parter.
Should we do one sentence recap? I'll just do Tulane under, UTSA over, Navy under, Army under, North Texas long shot, South Florida, my future.
Duck, what you got?
FAU under, Tulane under, Army under, North Texas long shot, UTSA to win the conference.
Yeah, UTSA is my pick to win the conference, as I mentioned, in terms of best bet, and I think you can right a lot of wrongs if you hit that playoff number at 18-1. So that's basically it. I just want to put a cap on this two-parter. Also mention that if you're listening, you're looking for the last G5 episode. The next one up is the MAC, and then Stuck and Colin put their big boy pants on and cover every single team at the Power 4 level. That drops next week, and before you know it, we're into week 0. Speaking of week 0, come join us at Joe's on Weed in Chicago, Illinois on August 23rd. Doors open at 11 a.m. You don't have to sign up. Just be there to have some drinks, play some bets with us. Farmageddon on the Emerald Isle, Iowa State, K-State. That's it for us. For Stuckey and Duck, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks so much for listening to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This has been the Group of 5 Deep Dive. And please keep us tuned throughout the preseason because we're going to have more preview content. We're going to have a Heisman episode. We're going to get into every single angle for week 0 as well and drop us a 5-star rating and review anywhere you listen to the podcast. Thanks so much for listening and can't wait to get into another full season with you guys here at BBOC.